This is every level of Dana White favoritism explained. Level 1 is the absolute bottom of the UFC food chain. I'm not talking about fighters who are unranked or don't get title shots. I'm talking about fighters who bleed for the company and get treated like they don't exist. And for this level, I'm really only talking about guys like Brandon Davis. Brandon Davis came through Dana White's Contender Series, earned his contract, and immediately got thrown into Shark Tanks. Short notice against Zabit Magomedsharipov, fed to Giga Chikadze, matched up against Randy Costa. Every single fight was designed to make somebody else look good, not him. He was the B-side, the sacrifice, the guy they call when they need a name to lose. And here's the thing, when he lost a couple fights, the UFC cut him without a second thought. No, we'll give him another chance, he's a warrior talk. No redemption arc, just gone. Meanwhile, Sam Alvey went 0-7-1 in the UFC and kept his roster spot for years. Why? Because Dana liked that he always smiled and always said yes. That's the difference between being liked and being useful. Brandon Davis was useful until he wasn't, and then he was nothing. That's level 1. Level 2 is where you get fighters who Dana genuinely likes. He'll say nice things about them, he'll give them steady work. But when it comes to actually protecting them or giving them real opportunities, that's where the love stops. Donald Cerrone is the perfect example. Cowboy fought everyone, everywhere, all the time. Short notice fights? He'd take them. Save a card on 2 weeks' notice? He'd do it. The UFC used him as a plug-and-play name whenever they needed a banger. Masvidal, Till, Edwards, Ferguson, Gaethje. Cowboy fought all of them with basically zero matchmaking mercy. Dana has called Cerrone the best fighter to never win a title. And that sounds like praise until you realize the UFC never actually set him up to win one. When Cowboy went on an 8-fight winning streak at lightweight, did the UFC slow his schedule to protect his title shot? No. They kept booking him constantly until he burned out right before fighting RDA. At welterweight, he picked up big wins and was never even seriously fast-tracked, just thrown at the next rising name. And then there's the Conor fight. Cowboy headlined UFC 246 against the biggest star in the sport. Reports say he made around $200,000 base for that fight. Meanwhile, Conor probably made 50 times that. A decade of service, and that's the reward. Dana won't even let Cowboy come back now. Says he doesn't want him to risk his health just for money. Which sounds caring until you remember all the times they let him risk his health when it made them money. Not loved as an investment. Level 3 is where Dana actually mentions you as one of the best. He'll hype you up in interviews, he'll call you a legend. But the promotional machine never fully kicks in for you. Alexander Volkanovski is exactly this. After UFC 290, Dana called Volk's performance total domination and said he looked incredible. After UFC 314, Dana said Volk is one of the best ever and always ready to fight. Whenever someone asks about featherweight GOATs, Volk's name comes up alongside Aldo, Max, and Conor. But here's what Volk never got. He never got the glossy multi-episode embedded world tour push that Conor and Ronda got. His title defenses against Max and Islam were some of the best fights in UFC history, and they were still undersold compared to other divisions. Volk was constantly willing to take risky fights. He went up a weight class to fight Islam for champ versus champ. He turned around quickly for rematches, and the organization did not create special interim belts for him. They did not freeze divisions around his schedule. They did not warp matchmaking in his favor. Dana is happy to have Volk as a reliable elite champion, but he doesn't revolve the promotion around him. That's the difference between being respected and being the priority. That's level 3. Level 4 is where Dana starts going to bat for you publicly. You get in trouble, say something controversial, create a PR nightmare, and instead of distancing himself, Dana defends you. Sean Strickland is the clearest example of this. Strickland has gone on multiple rants targeting the LGBTQ community, politicians, and media. Before UFC 297 in Canada, he launched a homophobic and transphobic tirade directly at a journalist. People demanded the UFC punish him. Dana's response? I don't tell any other human being what to say, what to think. Free speech, brother. People said he wouldn't leash Strickland or punish him for his speech. On Fox Business and other outlets, he doubled down. Free speech. Over and over. And here's what makes this level 4 and not just tolerance. Despite being a magnet for bad press, Strickland still headlined events. The UFC leaned into his chaos and promos. They didn't sideline him or bury him on prelims. Now compare that to fighters who criticized fighter pay or talked about unions. They got silent blacklisting, buried on cards, public verbal smackdowns from Dana. Strickland says way more inflammatory stuff, but it doesn't threaten the UFC's business. So Dana frames him as a free speech example instead of a problem. That's level 4. Public defense. The benefit of the doubt. A shield that most fighters will never get. Level 5 is stop applying. You don't have to earn your way to the contenders. You get shortcuts that would make any other fighter's path look like a joke. Brock Lesnar is the blueprint. Brock came to the UFC with a 1-0 professional MMA record. One fight. He lost his UFC debut to Frank Mir by submission. Then he beat Heath Herring. And at 2-1 in the UFC, he got a heavyweight title shot against Randy Couture. 2 wins and 1 loss. Title shot. That's it. Dana knew people would criticize it. He didn't care. Business picked up. Brock had WWE fame, freakish size, and crossover appeal. The UFC literally bent divisional logic to capture that money. And it gets worse. At UFC 200, Brock fought Mark Hunt and later popped for a banned substance. He got suspended. But the push to bring him back for title shots continued years later anyway. Dana was literally planning Brock versus DC in 2018, right after Brock shoved Cormier in the cage. Compare that to regular heavyweights. JDS, Kane, all of them had to put together multiple wins against ranked guys before sniffing a title shot. Brock went from 1-1 to champion in 2 fights. The message is clear: if you're a big enough draw, the merit system is optional. That's level 5. Level 6 is where you can do almost anything and still be the priority. Arrests, failed drug tests, controversy after controversy. Doesn't matter. You're too valuable to let go. Jon Jones is the definition of this level. The rap sheet is insane. Multiple PED issues, hit and run, DUIs, domestic violence arrest, and most recently, a USADA agent accused him of threatening to kill her. Every single time people ask, is he finally done? Every single time he comes back to main events and title shots and GOAT conversations. Dana said it himself on Bill Maher's podcast. He literally is always in trouble, always has something going on. But then Dana still calls him the greatest of all time. He compares Jones to troubled artists. These guys are like artists. With artists, unexpected situations arise. Think about that framing. Any other fighter with this record would be cut, done, blacklisted. But John gets divisions paused for him. Interim belts created around his schedule. The GOAT label protected no matter what he does. Now here's the twist. For the upcoming White House UFC event, John personally texted Dana to apologize and ask for a spot on the card. Dana's answer? I need fighters I can depend on. I know who those individuals are and I know who they are not. Even Jon Jones, the most protected fighter in UFC history, has limits. But those limits only showed up when the stakes were politically sensitive. For a decade before that, the UFC bent over backwards to keep him at the top. That's level 6. Untouchable until you're not. Level 7 is the final level. This is where the UFC doesn't just bend rules, they bend reality. You don't earn opportunities. Opportunities are created around you. The entire promotion revolves around your schedule, your demands, your brand. And there's only one fighter at this level: Conor McGregor. When Dana was asked who headlines the White House card, he didn't hesitate. Conor is the guy. Jon Jones literally reached out and apologized to get that spot. Dana still picked Conor. Let that sink in. The greatest light heavyweight of all time. Multiple title defenses. GOAT resume. And Dana chose the guy who hasn't won a fight in years. Because that's level 7. Conor won the featherweight belt and never defended it. The division was frozen while he did whatever he wanted. Then he moved up to lightweight, beat Eddie Alvarez, became double champ. Never defended that belt either. The lightweight division was held hostage. Tony Ferguson went on a 12-fight winning streak, won an interim title, never got his undisputed title shot while Conor held the belt, and boxed Floyd Mayweather. When Conor lost to Nate Diaz, he got an instant rematch at UFC 202. When he lost to Dustin Poirier, there was endless talk of a trilogy. When he sits out for years, Dana says, "We're working on it," instead of "he doesn't want to fight." Reports say Conor is demanding up to $200 million total for the White House fight. Cash plus perks. That would make it the highest single-event payday in UFC history. No other fighter could demand that and still be Dana's plan A. Conor can hold divisions hostage. He can sit out for years. He can make demands that would get any other fighter laughed out of the room. And the UFC says yes, because that's what level 7 is. The golden goose. The guy the promotion will bend reality for. And that's every level of Dana White favoritism explained.